Are the Kings in real danger of missing the playoffs? I'll answer that question and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we're on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 17 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, the Kings wrapped up their 4-game road trip through Canada against the struggling Winnipeg Jets, losers of 6 in a row heading into the game. Kings were coming off an embarrassing 4-2 loss in Calgary against the Flames on Saturday in one of their poorest efforts in the latter part of the season so far. As for the lineup in the game for the Kings, and there was some question as to what exactly it would be, but it would not include Kings center Philip Deneau. LA would return to the 12-6 setup, 12 forwards and 6 defensemen. Told you on Monday that Deneau was a game-time decision, and he would end up not playing in this one as he is nursing an upper body injury. So P.L. Dubois, again, would take Deneau's spot as the second-line center. Quentin Byfield moved back up to the top line with Andre Kopitar and Adrian Kempe. Victor Arvidsson was on the second line. Kevin Fiala, the third line, and Akil Thomas would make his NHL debut, centering the fourth line. Defenseman Jacob Moverare was the healthy scratch. Cam Talbot would get the start in net. As for the game, if you missed it, we'll give you a quick recap. The Kings allowed the first goal of the game for the third straight game, but they would answer back on a Victor Arvidsson goal, his second of the year, a laser beam shot, slap shot on the rush, and it would make that 1-1. Trevor Moore and Drew Doughty had the assists on that Arvidsson goal. Second period, Kevin Fiala gave the Kings a 2-1 lead on a nice spinning wrist shot. Vladislav Gavrikov with a lone assist. Again, Kings up 2-1 at that point. Winnipeg, though, would respond, even the game at 2-2 before LA regained the lead on an Andre Kopitar goal, the captain scoring on a nice feed from Adrian Kempe, and Vladislav Gavrikov had another assist. That made it 3-2. But the Jets would tie it up in the second period, and so we would go to the third period even at 3 apiece. In the third period, we had the key moment of the game as the Kings were killing off the only penalty called in the game. Kings leading scorer Trevor Moore had a shorthanded breakaway with a chance to give the Kings the lead. Their number one goal scorer shot the puck wide. The Jets immediately came right back down and scored to take a 4-3 lead, and they would hold on to win the game by a score of 4-3. As for the game stats in this one, shots on goal favored Winnipeg 32-28. Power play, Winnipeg was 0 for 1, although that one power play goal, or I should say the one goal in the third period, the game-winning goal, came literally seconds as the penalty expired. So, but it did come on the rush. So it wasn't a traditional power play goal in the sense that they had an advantage because of the extra man on the ice. It was after a transition play. We talked about the shorthanded missed opportunity. So I guess it's kind of fair that officially Winnipeg didn't get a power play goal against the Kings. As for LA, they didn't get any power play opportunities. They were 0 for 0. Face-offs favored the Jets 32-20. Block shots favored Winnipeg 17-13, and hits favored the Jets 40-33. Kings are now 38-25-11 on the season and have lost 3 in a row. One word to describe the loss to the Jets: frustrating. Let us hear what head coach Jim Hiller had to say about the loss to Winnipeg. Afterwards, he said, quote, "We had a lot of guys that played pretty hard. I thought they're a good team. They were desperate. I thought it was a good hockey game both ways. We had a breakaway. They come back. They get another one. It's that close, end quote. It was certainly a close game. It was a game that could have gone either way. And a lot of things happen in a hockey game that can ultimately decide the game. And I'm not blaming Trevor Moore and saying he's the reason that the Kings lost, but there's no question that him not capitalizing on that key opportunity was the key moment of the game. Tie game, third period, your leading goal scorer has a breakaway and he doesn't put it on net. And that can't happen. You have to make the goalie make a save. When you shoot it wide, trying to pick a corner, you're letting the defense off the hook for the mistake that they made to give you that breakaway opportunity. You're letting the goalie off the hook because he doesn't even have to make a save to prevent a key scoring opportunity. You have to make the goalie make a save in that situation. And if he makes the save, you give him credit for making a good play, but you just can't shoot it wide in that situation. And more importantly, you need to bury that. I mean, that is a golden opportunity. Again, it's your leading goal scorer on a breakaway. Frustrating. So the Kings are now 15-10-1 under Jim Hiller. This is the first 3-game losing skid since he took over as head coach. The Kings have allowed 4 goals in each of their last 3 games, all losses. Now, Hiller has been tinkering around with the lines, as we know, and some of that has been dictated because of injuries. But I think it's time now to try and get things settled as much as possible as for the lineup as we're getting ready, we hope, to be in the playoffs. There are 8 games left. The Kings are not leaving the state of California the rest of the way. Their 2 road games are in San Jose and Anaheim. They've got 6 home games, including the final 4 of the season. Getting this team going in the right direction, obviously, is a priority. Now, they need to string some wins together to get into the postseason and to hopefully do something in the postseason. The schedule is very favorable. There are no excuses. Get it going in the right direction, Jim Hiller. This is a chance for you maybe to get a job as a head coach in the NHL with the LA Kings. If things go a certain way in the postseason, this is your opportunity to be an NHL head coach. Maybe if it even doesn't happen with the Kings, if you do a good job the rest of the way and show something in the playoffs, maybe you get a job with somebody else. But this is the time, the spotlight now on Jim Hiller to get things going with this team. Again, try and get the lineup set as much as you can. I understand health can be a part of that, but now is the time. This is it. This losing skid has to end, and you have got to get it going here in this stretch of games to end the season. Not only to secure a playoff spot, but to try and be playing well into the postseason and do something in the playoffs rather than just a one and done like they've done the last 2 years. As far as the keys to winning in Winnipeg, did want to check in on that to see how it went for the Kings. We talked about play a connected game, certainly much better in that area than it was against Calgary. So there was improvement there. Get the penalty kill back on track. That hasn't been proven. There was only 1 penalty called in the entire game, as we mentioned. And as I said, it wasn't as if Winnipeg set up their power play and was able to score that way when they did score their 1 goal. It was on a rush after that missed shorthanded opportunity. So that question has not been answered. As far as shots on goal and go to the net, I did think that was one of the pluses to take away for the Kings in this one. Now they had just 9 shots on goal in the first 2 periods in the game against Calgary, and then they went a long stretch without any shots at all. So going into this game against Winnipeg, it was about getting shots on net, getting to the net, getting bodies in front, deflections, screens, that kind of thing. The Kevin Fiala goal, Alex Laferriere was in front of the net, doing a little bit of that, trying to screen the goaltender. I think that did help. So the Kings did an okay job in that regard. I thought they did make a concerted effort to get more shots on goal. They had a shot mentality. Now, they only had 5 in the first period, but they were looking to shoot. There were shots that went wide. There were shots that were blocked. But again, they did have a shot mentality. They made that a priority, so that was a good thing. They had 12 shots on goal in the second period, 11 shots on goal in the third. So I thought that was an improvement over the Calgary game. And the Trevor Moore breakaway aside, it was nice to see the Kings' big players coming up big. You got goals from Fiala, Kopitar, Arvidsson. So those guys need to keep that going forward. Some of the negatives from this game, the minuses, we talked about the Trevor Moore missed opportunity. We didn't get an answer on the penalty kill, so that's still something to look on. The Kings not drawing a penalty in the game. Now, I know the refs were letting them play, and they were consistent with that, so I'm okay with the officiating, but it is kind of hard to believe that the Winnipeg Jets went the entire game and did not commit a penalty at any point. We talked about the big guns kind of coming through for the Kings, but not much secondary scoring coming for the Kings. It'd be nice to get a goal from somebody in the bottom six, and God forbid a defenseman would actually chip in with a goal or two as well. Now, I have said that I believe the Kings are going to make the playoffs, but what if they don't? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it is time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 that you can use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. College hoops, the NBA, and of course the NHL. You want to bet on the Kings snapping that 3-game losing skid coming up this Wednesday as they host the Seattle Kraken? You can do that with our friends on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you can bet on the NBA, NHL, and of course college hoops until they cut down the nets. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel apps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I did want to comment on the NHL debut of Kings forward Akil Thomas. First off, I don't know when or if it started, but the tradition of letting a player in his first NHL game and his NHL debut go out on the ice, take that solo lap in the warm-up and get a couple of shots off before his teammates join him, that is very cool. I know it's not something that's been around for, more than 10 years, I would think. But I think it actually kind of started as a joke, to be honest with you, but it's turned into something I think very fun and very cool. It was fun to see Akil Thomas, and we've seen this with other players, Alex Laferriere. You go out there and you take that lap all by yourself, get a little bit of look at me, I'm a rookie and I'm playing in my first game. As for Akil Thomas, the 23-year-old made his NHL debut on the fourth line. Finished a -1, no points. He was credited with 3 hits, and that was tied to the team lead. So clearly he was flying around out there and looking to make some things happen physically. However, he only played 3 minutes and 42 seconds, and I don't remember him getting a single shift in the third period. Hard to believe he couldn't get a few more shifts in this game. I know it was a close game. I know the Kings are looking to get off the schneid, but certainly seeing that, what a far cry from where the Kings were earlier in this season when they were rolling 4 lines and everybody was contributing. It just isn't the case right now. But congratulations, Akil Thomas. You are an NHLer. You made it. You've played an NHL game. I'm not sure how much action he's going to get going forward if and when Phillip Danault returns. But again, there are plenty of players who have been close and never gotten a chance. So congratulations, Akil Thomas. Again, you're an NHL player. You made it. Nobody can ever take that away from you. Hopefully he can get some more chances to show what he can do. If not this season, then maybe next season. Speaking of Phillip Danault, I think if there was ever, a sense of him being underappreciated, I hope that's not the case anymore because clearly the Kings miss him. I mean, it's only been 2 games without him, but they're clearly a much better team with him. I know he's not spectacular, but he's solid. He's reliable. He does so many good things well, offensively and defensively. Blake Lizotte, I thought he actually played pretty well in that third-line center role, but he's not Phillip Danault, and the Kings certainly need him back sooner rather than later as we start this stretch run. I'm expecting him to be back on Wednesday. They talked about him being a game-time decision for the game against Winnipeg. I'm glad they didn't push it. I'm glad they decided to give him the extra time off. Make absolutely positively sure, because he's a very important player. So look for him to get back Wednesday against Seattle, I believe, and that'll make the Kings that much better as they get ready for this final push towards the playoffs. Now, I have said repeatedly the Kings are going to make the playoffs, and I firmly believe that. And I'm not going to flip-flop on that, even though there is a chance that it could happen. The Kings don't make the playoffs. I truly believe they're going to make the playoffs. I'll tell you why, and I've explained this before. But what if the Kings don't make the playoffs? Just hypothetically, what if the worst case scenario happens? And this might sound a little bit weird, but I think as disappointing as that would be, and it would be extremely disappointing, it does make things, I think, a lot clearer and a lot easier. If the Kings miss the playoffs, there's no doubt in my mind we'll have a new GM and we'll have a new head coach next year. And who knows what changes as far as the roster goes that could bring. Now, Kings ownership is pretty hands-off, but they're spending to the cap. They're paying a coach to not coach this team. And if they don't make the playoffs and miss out on that playoff revenue, that is something that will get their attention. That is something that they will demand something changes, and that people are held accountable. So again, worst case scenario, if that doesn't happen, I believe it does in a sense bring clarity to what the offseason is going to look like. And again, I'm not rooting for that. I'm not wanting that to happen. I'm just saying if it does happen, then I think it takes the guesswork out of what's going to happen. It's going to be major changes, and justifiably so. To me, it would almost like having a positive out of a negative. However, if the Kings do make the playoffs, which I do believe they will, what happens if they lose in the first round, but it's a competitive series? What if it's a 7-game series? What if there are a couple of overtime games? What if they make it out of the first round and then get swept in the second round? Now it's not clear anymore what's going to happen. And I don't even know if the Kings know what they're going to do in that kind of scenario, because they spelled it out at the beginning of the year. The goal was to get out of the first round of the playoffs and to have some progress. If they end up having that, is that success? Do we feel like they're heading in the right direction? How about if they lose in the first round for a third straight year? Certainly that's hard to say there's progress, but what if they play Dallas, and what if it's a 7-game series, and what if it's a really competitive series? Does that change things? Does that make things less clear? Probably. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this ends up. In the end, certainly I'm hoping the Kings can make the playoffs, because we've seen in hockey, if you get in, you got a shot. And if you don't, you don't. It may be the way it looks right now. Does it look like the Kings have a great chance to do something in the playoffs? No. At the moment, it doesn't, but things change. And as Kings fans, I don't think it's completely a pipe dream or wishful thinking when we've seen not that long ago the Kings as an 8 seed winning the Stanley Cup. And sure, some things had to go their way. Playing in Arizona in the conference finals certainly was a matchup that was favorable. But still, we've seen it with our own eyes. So it's hard to not want to see them get a shot at it. Things aren't looking great right now. I know I'm a pretty positive guy, generally speaking. And I understand the negativity surrounding what's going on right now, but let's see how it plays out. Again, the schedule is very favorable. All these games at home, it's kind of there for the Kings to get it going and head it in the right direction here at the end, but they got to go out and do it. And maybe this urgency, maybe this threat of not making the playoffs, maybe this is just the kick in the pants that they need to get it going. The fact that it isn't a sure thing at this point. We'll see. So where do the Kings sit in terms of a wild card spot, specifically with the St. Louis Blues? We'll give you the details on that here next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. We are heading into that stretch run of the NHL season, and the Kings are looking to make that playoff push. But regardless of where they are in the standings, I want to remind you that you can always win big playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy contests. All you have to do is pick if a player will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. And it's not just the NHL. You can also play daily fantasy with the NBA. You want to win 100 times bet on sleeper? Well, then you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. And if you can do that, you can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with sleeper. So start paying attention, nail your picks, and you can win big. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL and get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availabilities. The LA Kings face the Seattle Kraken 6:30 p.m. Pacific time on Wednesday night. Catch every moment of the hometown broadcast to your LA Kings with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search LA Kings. And that 6:30 start time, a little bit weird. That's because it's a TNT television game. And those games never start on time, by the way. They say 6:30, but it's always closer to 7 o'clock. That early game always seems to run long. The game will still be televised locally on Bally Sports West, but it's also an option on TNT as well for those of you that may be trying to follow the Kings outside of the LA area. All right, let's check in on the standings in the Pacific Division and the Western Conference playoff race coming out of the action from Monday. You had the Edmonton Oilers losing to the St. Louis Blues in overtime 3-2, so Edmonton does still pick up a point, giving them 95 on the season. Vegas is 5 points back with 90 points in third place in the Pacific. Nashville checks in with 90 points, the number one wildcard team in the Western Conference. The Kings obviously getting no points in the loss against Winnipeg, still at 87 points. So 3 points back in Nashville for the number one wildcard spot, 3 points back of Vegas for the third spot in the Pacific Division. And St. Louis getting those big 2 points for the overtime win over Edmonton. They're now at 84 points. So the Blues are 3 points back of the LA Kings. And the Kings have some things going for them. I've talked about this before, but we'll tell you again. When it comes to them in a race with the St. Louis Blues for that second wildcard spot, the Kings have a game in hand. They've played one fewer game than the Blues. That gives them an opportunity to get more points than St. Louis with that extra game. Kings have 8 games left. Of those 8 games, 7 of them are against non-playoff teams. Kraken, Sharks, Ducks, Flames, Ducks again, Wild, and Blackhawks. The lone playoff team the Kings will face the rest of the way this coming Saturday at home against the Vancouver Canucks. St. Louis has 7 games left. Of those 7 games, 4 of them are against non-playoff teams, Sharks, Ducks, Blackhawks, and Kraken. 3 of them are against current playoff teams in the Predators, Hurricanes, and Stars. So again, the Kings have a game in hand. They have the easier schedule. If the Kings blow this, which I cannot imagine they will, but if they do, then obviously heads are going to roll and things are going to change, as well they should. Now, if the playoffs started today, the Kings would face the Dallas Stars in the first round of the playoffs. Stars currently hold a 3-point lead over Colorado for first place in the Central. Dallas also has a 3-point lead on Vancouver for the top spot in the Western Conference with 103 points. So if the Kings finish in that second wildcard spot, it would be the Dallas Stars as their first round opponent. But they are battling the Golden Knights, and they are battling the Predators as well. Golden Knights are 3 points up on the Kings, as I mentioned, third place in the Pacific. They will host the Vancouver Canucks tonight, so a tough game for Vegas. Predators, who lead the Kings by 3 points from the number one wildcard spot, will host the Bruins tonight, so a tough game for Nashville as well. We'll certainly update you on those games and what the point situation looks like for tomorrow. Kings, Golden Knights, and Predators all have 74 games played. So they have the same number of games the rest of the way. Obviously, Vegas and Nashville will have 75 after tonight. Nashville has 35 regulation wins and holds the tiebreaker over the Kings, who have 32. And the Kings have the tiebreaker currently over Vegas. The Golden Knights have 31 regulation wins, one fewer than the Kings. So again, things can change on a nightly basis. But all those teams certainly looking to try and clinch a playoff spot, trying to hold off the Blues. But right now, it's still very, very close between Vegas, LA, and Nashville. Who will get third in the Pacific? Who will get the number one or number two wild card spots? It's going to be interesting to see how it goes down the stretch. But again, Schedule favors the Kings. They're playing a bunch of games at home, not leaving the state of California the rest of the way. It's setting up good for the Kings, but they've got to take care of business. We'll see if they do it or not. So for you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Wednesday, we'll preview the Kings-Kraken game that night. Thursday, recap that game as well as preview that night's Kings-Sharks game as the Kings have back-to-back games coming up on Wednesday and Thursday. One road, one home. Friday, obviously, we'll recap the Kings-Sharks game, and we'll also preview Saturday's Kings-Canucks game and have another Kings fan feedback show on Friday. Busy week for the Kings rest of the way. Hope you will be with us the rest of the week. If you want to get an email in for whatever reason, whether it's for the feedback show or anything else, email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. If you're watching on YouTube, love for you to post your comments in the comments section. We would love for you to stay connected with us on social media as well. We're on X, Twitter, and Instagram at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings, go.